Yeah, Steffi, ladies and gentlemen, the DLD crowd, actually, thank you once again for inviting me here to the DLD Conference, being part of this experience here in Munich. At the beginning of the 20s, it's the beginning of a new decade. Every now and then, I'm not sure if we really already have realized it. It's about shaping the new decade in the next 10 years. And I think when it is about shaping, approaching a new decade, it's as well about where do we want to be in 2030. And I want to be in 2030 in a Europe that is united, is prosperous and secure, preserved its free and liberal way of life, and advocates for its values in the world. To achieve this, successful digitalization will be crucial, not only for obvious reasons, not only for prosperity and growth. Our European way of life and the future of liberal democracy are closely linked to digitalization. And I know that one colleague here already mentioned that there is a risk of becoming a digital data mining colony of China and the US. I know most people here in the room are aware of this aspect of the digital revolution. But however, in the political realm where I'm from, these linkages are hardly understood. And even more, in my health portfolio, you start even with the question of how to get rid of fax machines. I don't know if you're aware, but I would say the German health system is the last system in the Western world that is actually mainly still communication by faxes. So, at the same time, while that is the case, we introduce apps on prescription, work on the digital connections of medical practices, and the use of big data for medical research. And if I might, just a short information about what we just changed, just to let all the startup community of digital health know. We are the first country in the world. You know, in many areas of digitalization, Germany might not be the first. But when it comes on to apps on prescription, we are the first country in the world that not only introduced, that is what other countries have as well, the measurement of added value of a digital health app. And we are just introducing it right now, the legal base is already there, make it similar to drugs or other treatments that we measure added value and try to define it. But the second step, and that is where we are world champion at least for some months now, I hope for longer perhaps, is that we are the first country in the world that actually has a coverage of the public health system for these apps on prescription. And that is important for patients because for diabetes, for psychotherapies, for many other blood pressure, many other diseases, it really makes a difference. It's not just about counting steps, but it's a difference as well for the startup community here in Germany because many founders in Berlin, Munich, and other countries told me if they have a digital app, invented and want to bring it to the market, it's very hard actually in Germany to get a real market share. Why? The average German is not used to pay out of the pocket for health. So their biggest growth market is always the US or the UK. And now with this step that we say it's covered by the health system and you don't have to pay for it if it is proved and has a proved added value, that is not just good for patients, it's a chance for startups as well here in Germany that they can enter a market of 70 million public insured people here, which really makes a difference. And I'm a bit proud that at least in this area of digital health, we are first movers. So all these matters got one thing in common, the question of whether we can shape the digital change or whether we will have to adapt to ideas of someone else. Unfortunately, we often realize this when it's too late. Take the discussion about 5G and Huawei. When the number in the corner of our smartphone screens changed from 3G to 4G, fewer of us even noticed. But the rollout of 5G could likely become a geopolitical turning point, at least for Europe, because there is simply no European company which is able to provide this technology. And for me, the actually fundamental question is not, should we buy in China or not? The actual question should be, why are we not able to develop and produce it ourselves anymore here in Germany and in Europe? Here in this town, by the way, in Munich, there used to be a company that actually was engaged in this area. That should be the question. Why is there no product from Europe in this? So how much freedom would we lose if the digital infrastructure of the future, the basis for the Internet of Things, lied in Chinese hands? I got no answer to this. But the question scares me. It worries me. And I do not want to run the risk of similar questions arising in the health sector, where we are actually on the same way. This is why we are pushing forward, for example, with digital patient files. And by pushing forward, I just need to tell you that actually 15 years ago, the digital patient file project in Germany used to be the biggest IT project in Europe. But because of all the veto players we have in the system and the complex health system we have, within this 15 years, actually nothing happened, more or less. I always call it the Berlin airport of the health system, because for 15 years now, no real airplane started in this sector. And what we are now about to do is that in 2021, we start with the digital patient file here in Germany. We put our efforts together. And yes, by speeding up, we are taking some political risk there too, because very private data, and that is health data, is involved, which means any leakage would be one too many. And I'm very much aware who would be the one to blame. But I'm deeply convinced if we have too much reservations, we will stand aside and watching Google and Apple, Tencent and Alibaba investing billions already in this area of digital health. And the digital dominance of China and the US has much more consequences for us than just in the economic realm. Take the usage of data, as I just mentioned. On the one hand, we see data omnipotence on the part of the state in China. The state party decides which personal data is collected and how it is used. On the other hand, we got market-driven data mining in the US, where, to put it simply, money makes the decision. Both models reflect different society systems, and both models influence the society systems. Both are, in varying degrees, not compatible with our European values, but we must use data. If several thousand patients with diabetes, cancer, or dementia were to make their data available for research, we could learn a great deal from them. Data can actually heal people. This is why I say one can argue about the ethics of using data, yes. But one can also argue about the ethics of not using data if you miss the chance to help ill people. This is why we need our own European liberal and self-determined model of data use. And I'm very happy that the Commission is actually taking on this. One where the citizens decide in a proper manner what to share, and the state guarantees for data safety. And during our EU presidency, in the second half of this year, for the area of data health, we want to start the development of a code of conduct within the GDPR for data health usage in Europe, actually to have a framework on which startups, companies, researchers in the 27 member states of the European Union can rely. And it is a path that we want to take in the German healthcare system too. We are striving for a state collection of data for which citizens can provide their data voluntarily by an easy choice, within the digital patient file, for example. This collection should be made available to research in a controlled manner. In this way, new successful treatment methods, drugs, or diagnostic procedures can be advanced by analyzing large amounts of data. And there I can tell you a short story of an everyday life of a German health minister. Just 2-3 months ago, we had a debate on health data framework. for research. And you know, at the same time, Google bought Fitbit. When Google buys Fitbit and collects even more data, perhaps one of you have it too, wearing it too. If Google buys Fitbit and is collecting more data of German and European citizens, no debate, nowhere. Nowhere. If we want to set up a legal framework to use actually accounting data, it's not even patient file data, accounting data of the public insurances, anonymous, to give it to research institutions to make a difference, big scandal. I almost lost the majority in Parliament on that. In the end, I had a majority, but was hard to get because within days, without any link to the real subject, big scandal. And as long as that is the case, this general trust in US big corporates and this general mistrust in your own state organizing the use of data, as long as that is the case here in Germany and Europe, actually we will not find a proper way of having this important debate, and actually we will not be able to compete. So actually I want to invite you, not just in this room and on this conference, that we actually have to tell and to explain people that the use of data makes a difference for their personal life. And they know it for Facebook and flying and buying and whatever, but that using data for health, for example, and health research really can make a difference for them. And every time they write, "I have a flu," in a WhatsApp group, this data, health data information is to the end of the world on a US server. But as soon as we try to have something on a server here in Germany, it's a difficult debate. So, just out of an everyday life experience of a health politician in Germany. Ideally, European researchers will in future be able to access this data on all types of cancer and dementia from all over in Europe. That is actually the next step we are planning and trying to speed up during our presidency together with the Commission. But we cannot wait until this big solution is in place and every detail has been thought through and is regulated. The vision is clear, so let's start now with individual types of cancer and individual countries, for example. With a clear goal, we can be a Europe of pioneers in the digital world. Some member states, we don't wait for the last one, some member states, some pioneers with courage go forward and pave the way. And France and Germany, by the way, just started in the area of research for AI. I would have loved us to start with 2 billion instead of 20 million, but at least we started, and it's growing. We are debating Gaia X. Quantum computing was discussed, the European server capacities, that the European budget is not just about agriculture and cohesion, but as well about investing in European cloud capacities, for example, and research in the area of AI. And that we do it in a pioneer way by saying, as I said, let's not wait for the last one. The experience is with the defense union, by the way. It was started by Germany and France because we didn't want to wait for the last one anymore, since 40 years, by the way. And then by starting and saying, and everyone who wants to join is allowed to join. 26 are meanwhile in, but actually when some start, no one wants to be left behind. And we should have this approach more often in Europe, within the European Union, not always waiting for the community way until the last one is actually moving, but starting with those who want to be pioneers. By the way, since that was debate 2 here, I think we need to change antitrust laws too in Germany, because in Germany and Europe, because, we already started the debate and already changed some of the framework, not just looking at the market share regarding euros, turnover sales, but as well the turnover of data, to say it that way. But it's not just a question of the digital world. Take the old industry world, Siemens and Alstom. Of course, you can have a look on the national markets. But if we really want to compete with Chinese and US companies, it's not enough to just have a look on national markets and the market share there. If we want to have companies that are really able to cope with the big players in the world, I personally think, and I'm very convinced, we need to change these laws to make European big players possible and being actually a continent that is able to compete. So to end, let's remember, 20 years ago there was no smartphone, no Google, no Facebook, no Alibaba. And the digital revolution just began. Inventions will be made within the next 10 years, and if you just have an idea how much changed the past 10 years, you might have an idea what might all change in the 20s. And that, again, is a chance for Europe. Yes, we are a bit behind in some areas, but we already had some debates here on the stage that actually showed we have all the chances to speed up in this decade, in the areas that are important and crucial now. So if we want to live in a Europe in 2030 that is united, prosperous and secure, that preserved its free and liberal way of life and advocates for its values in the world, it will be important that a lot of these ideas come from Europe. And if I might add, as a minister who is responsible for a social budget in health and elderly care, I know very well that these aging societies of Europe, and all of our societies are aging, if we won't be able to afford our social security systems in 10 years' time, even having grown older then, we need a rise in productivity. That's quite obvious. When I hear this debate, let's measure luck, like Bhutan. Bhutan is the most happy country in the world. Let's become more happy. It's all good. But happiness alone pays not for pensions. You still need growth. And if you want to have growth in an aging society, a society with a declining labor force, you need a rise in productivity. And that is actually what is offered by digitalization as well. So, and more important, besides all these, as I said, prosperity and growth issues, it's about our ideas, values, ideals too. And I think this is a chance, or the beginning of a new decade, that Europe really tries, and hopefully does so successfully, tries to make a difference with this new commission in place, with many, many member states that actually want to engage, and a crowd like this. Thank you.